Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening. Chapter 1. Apocalypse Traveler. Day 1, somewhere in winter found a backpack. Inside, there's a notebook and a pen. Great, starting a journal today. But I don't know this world's calendar, so I'll just count today as day 1. First day of journaling, I found a backpack under the archway at the entrance of Wanchai Village, Dongman County. The word corpse on the archway should have a dot on top, but it's missing. At least the writing in this world is the same as in my past life. The snow is heavy. I should take shelter here for now. Day 2, snow stopped as expected, another abandoned village. But at least there's a village. This damn world. I haven't even seen a single city. What kind of messed up place have I traveled to? Is there really no one alive in this world? At least I have the dog with me. Too bad it's a mechanical dog. Hugging it doesn't warm me up. It actually makes me colder. Day 3, this dog is really useful. The place it led me to is full of good stuff. Scavenged through the whole village and found a box of expired bottled water. 24 bottles. Also, 2 bags of mini bread, 20 pieces per bag. The packaging is too worn out to read, but the bread is rock hard and tastes weird. If that's not expired, I don't know what is. But the dog says it's fine for me to eat, so it must be fine. Tried some. It really is fine. Guess I have an iron stomach in this life. I'll store everything for now, no rush to eat. Several cellars of cabbage and radishes, and there's rice in the granaries. After tossing out the ones gnawed by rats and gathering the rest, I can last about a month. Also found oil, salt, soy sauce, and vinegar. I really have it good. Though. Those rat-bitten ones might have been better left alone. Day 4, chopped a lot of firewood outside the village. Exhausted. Thankfully, the forest isn't far, otherwise, I'd be even more dead tired. I'm worn out, but the dog is totally fine. From the time I found it until now, it's been running strong for over half a year. Like a perpetual motion machine. It doesn't even have an arc reactor or anything. Too bad it's so small. If it were bigger, I could just pile the firewood on top of it and save myself the effort. Day 5, spotted a rat. Big win. Still no sign of mutated creatures. How did all the people in this world disappear? The dog is amazing. It caught the rat. Today's meal, stir-fried cabbage with meat. But first, the dog needs to scan it and make sure it's safe to eat. This dog can compare my digestion abilities with its database and confirm food safety, ensuring I don't get poisoned or have stomach issues. It's really useful. Day 47, cabbage, radishes, and rice are almost gone. Time to leave. Left behind some food as backup. Had the dog mark the spot. If I find a suitable place later, I can come back and see if I can grow something. Hope these supplies stay intact. Tore a piece of paper and wrote, "The future's fire seed is stored here," and left it with the supplies. If there are other survivors and they stumble upon Wanchai Village to scavenge, I wonder what their reaction will be? The north is too cold. I'm heading south. Day 48, walked about 20 miles. Can't go on. Resting. Carrying bottled water on my back, bread in a bag. Damn heavy. Mostly the bottled water. I'm way stronger than I was in my past life. No idea why. Back then, I definitely couldn't have carried this much. Dog, why can't you be bigger? You're the size of a corgi. What's the point of you? Day 49, found some duct tape. Took 12 bottles of water and taped them onto the dog. Much lighter now. Day 52, I want a vehicle. But even if there are cars in this world, they probably don't work anymore. No way to refuel them. A bicycle would be ideal. A tricycle, even better, for carrying supplies. But unfortunately, I haven't even seen a single wheel. This world is so boring. Even watching a wheel roll would be nice. Day 64, no idea how far south I've traveled. Luckily found a pair of hiking boots. Fit perfectly, brand new. My luck is insane. This is Kinyang Town, Mazu City. That's what the sign across from the shoe store says, so it should be right. Finally found a city. Took long enough. There must be other people in this world. Otherwise, why are all the store shelves completely empty? If the hiking boots hadn't been stuck under a collapsed track, I probably wouldn't have found them. Need to be careful. Further south, I can see high-rises. That should be Mazu City. I'll rest here for today and check it out tomorrow. Cut myself shaving. Miss my razor. But at least I'm getting better at shaving with a knife. Day 65 found the Mazu City police station. Like the rest of the city, it's abandoned. Gun vault is locked, but luckily, I have the dog. If I could bring this thing back to my past life and open a locksmith business, I'd make a fortune. Not much in stock. 1 handgun, 2 submachine guns, 4 boxes of ammo. The dog checked them. All usable. More weight to carry. Might as well stay here for a while. Lots of wild animals in this abandoned city. With guns, I can have fresh meat. Day 66 bad aim. Just sprayed bullets everywhere. Wasted 3 boxes of ammo. But hey, meat for dinner. As always, let the dog scan it first. Day 67 sudden snowfall. Yesterday was warm, and today the temperature plummeted. This kind of extreme shift has happened before. But before, I was focused on traveling south and just thought it was because I was leaving the north. With this kind of climate, farming must be nearly impossible. Strange how the grass, trees, and vines still thrive. Could this apocalyptic world be connected to this weird environment? Day 75 blizzard yesterday, sweating today. The snow has melted into puddles all over the ground. The weather changes too drastically. Normally, when snow melts, it should get colder, but this weather, it's like it wants to kill me. Finally saw people. I could actually understand what they were saying. So familiar, so comforting. Too bad they tried to rob me. Wasted 1 box of bullets. Handling 2 guns alone was too much, but luckily, the dog helped me reload. Day 81 saw people again. The ones before were called the Wolf Gang. Today's group. Someone called them the Dog Gang. Wolf or dog, they all want to rob me. Not good people. Wasted half a box of bullets. Improvement. Can't stay here. Not safe. In this messed up world, I can't even find a single decent person to talk to. What a pain. Day 99? This place is nice. A standalone villa. The plaque at the entrance says, number 272, Jiang Road, Nandwan City. No idea where number 271 and number 273 went. The villa's electrical system is intact. The dog hooked itself up to the wiring. Turns out, it can charge. Dog is awesome. Note, there's a swimming pool in the yard, and it's full of water. Probably from the melted snow. The dog checked it. Totally fine. Nothing more to say. Grabbing a bottle to collect some water, taking a bath, and going to sleep. Too bad I need to conserve water, or I'd just jump right in. Nothing beats a bath before bed. Day 100 damn. Pen ran out of ink. Whatever, not writing anymore. Who even keeps a journal seriously? The last few lines were faint, barely more than indentations on the paper, with almost no visible ink. Lu Xian tossed the pen aside and closed the notebook. He wanted to throw it away but felt it wouldn't be right. There were bits and pieces of useful information in it. Could be helpful later. Would be a waste to toss it, and he didn't want someone else picking it up. After all, there were other people in this world. So far, he'd met 2 groups, and neither were good news. If someone like them got their hands on this diary, it would definitely be bad. Tearing it up. That'd be a shame too. He'd actually written this many pages. Unthinkable in his past life. He never had the patience back then. Forget it. Might as well keep it. Dog, bedtime. After stuffing the notebook into his bag, Lu Xian called toward the electrical panel. Hanging from the panel was a mechanical dog, pitch black, with a metallic sheen. It wasn't long, and its legs were short. Between each of its 4 limbs was a joint with gears, making its legs look even shorter. Openings on both sides of its body extended 2 black cables, plugged into the villa's wiring, holding it suspended there. Hearing Lu Xian's call, the mechanical dog immediately retracted the cables. With a clatter, it dropped to the ground, and the openings on its side sealed shut. As soon as the power cut off, the villa was plunged into darkness. The dog's titanium alloy eyes instantly lit up, casting beams of light ahead. It trotted toward Lu Xian with a clack-clack, guiding him as it made a round of the villa to confirm there were no threats. Its legs moved with both agility and stiffness. Fast, but causing its metal body to wobble left and right, making it look a little ridiculous. Seriously, what was the creator of this dog thinking? Why not make its legs longer? Or at least give it 4 wheels? Still, whatever the case, Lu Xian had to be grateful to whoever built it. And to the dog itself. It was the first useful thing he had found in this ruined, desolate world, and it had helped him tremendously. Without the dog, he'd probably have died somewhere long ago. Even now, he still felt lucky. Lucky that he'd taken a second glance at that black metal box in an abandoned basement and got his iris scanned by accident. That basement had been even farther north than Wanchai village in Dongmen County. No landmarks, no name, just an unremarkable underground pit. He had marked its coordinates with a dog. If he ever needed to go back, he'd be able to find it. From that moment on, he had become the mechanical dog's owner. Outside, rain started pouring. A rainy night like this was perfect for sleeping. And for once, he was lucky. There was a soft bed in this villa, ready to be enjoyed. After confirming there were no threats, Lu Xian quickly went upstairs to the bedroom. The moment he lay on the bed, his entire body relaxed in comfort. The mechanical dog didn't get on the bed. Its short legs wouldn't allow it to climb up anyway. Instead, it curled up by the bedside, transforming back into the black metal box it had started as. That must be its resting mode. Thud. A sudden noise from downstairs. Like something. Or someone. Hitting the door. Lu Xian instantly sprang up from the bed, and the dog immediately shifted back into its canine form. The rain was pouring down, nearly drowning out the sound. But in this world, Lu Xian had long trained himself to stay alert, and he caught it clearly. As for the mechanical dog, there was no need to even mention its awareness. Lu Xian grabbed the submachine gun he had left by the bedside and silently stepped out of the bedroom. The dog dipped its head, then lifted it again. Now with a leather pouch slung around its neck. Lu Xian had made that pouch back at the police station, using bear hide and some sewing supplies scavenged from the ruined tailor shop. It made it easier for the dog to carry things. Right now, it was filled with ammo. Man and dog crouched by the staircase, peering through the railing down at the entrance. The noise had stopped. Whoever was outside had probably given up on forcing the door open. But Lu Xian didn't lower his guard. The next moment. Crash. Just as expected, someone shattered a window and climbed in. It was a woman. Chapter 2, the woman downstairs. A bolt of lightning struck, flashing brightly for an instant, allowing Lu Xian to see the woman downstairs clearly. Her hair barely reached her shoulders, messy and uneven, as if it had been hacked off carelessly. She wore wide-legged, durable pants and a tight black tank top. A brown leather jacket was tied around her waist by its sleeves. Her boots were also brown, but old and scuffed. Her skin was rough, her lips cracked, but even so, her striking and well-defined features couldn't be hidden. Paired with her cold, sharp eyes and lean yet muscular arms, she had a wild, untamed beauty. She carried a backpack that was even bigger than her upper body, stuffed to the brim. Seemed like she was pretty strong, just like Lu Xian. She was highly alert, holding a sizable green metal canister in one hand and a pistol in the other. The moment she entered, she crouched low and moved swiftly to another window, gently setting down the canister. Then, keeping her gun level, she scanned the room carefully. Lu Xian remained motionless upstairs. Shooting wasn't easy. Hitting a moving, retaliating target was even harder. Having enjoyed the firepower surplus at the police station, Lu Xian understood this well. His marksmanship was still lacking, and bullets were no longer as plentiful as they had been back then. Unless necessary, he didn't want to waste them. The woman searched the lower floor while Lu Xian observed from above. After confirming she was alone, he relaxed slightly. When she finished her search, she moved toward the stairs. As she reached the staircase, Lu Xian finally spoke, "If you don't come up, I can let you have the lower floor for now." Lu Xian had already stationed himself at the top of the stairs with the mechanical dog. This was the only connection between the upper and lower floors. The woman froze, then immediately slipped out of his line of sight. Lu Xian knew she had moved into the blind spot of the staircase view. He didn't budge, holding his position firmly. The villa had high ceilings. After fighting others in this world and testing the limits of his own strength, he was sure, having checked the entire house inside and out, that she couldn't climb up from anywhere else. So, he just had to hold this position. A long silence followed. Finally, from an unseen corner downstairs, the woman spoke. A single word, "Okay." Her voice was nice, but slightly hoarse. Maybe from dehydration. Rare. A normal person he could actually communicate with. Not easy to come by in this world. Lu Xian felt slightly better, but he didn't lower his guard. He continued crouching by the stairway, watching. The woman, knowing he was there, still stayed out of sight. "There's water in the swimming pool," Lu Xian said. "I checked. It's safe for me to drink, not sure if it is for you. You can take a bucket if you want." He couldn't take the pool water with him anyway. Might as well share it. No harm in that. Lu Xian had already noticed that the metal canister she was carrying was empty. She must have been planning to fill it with some kind of liquid. If not water, then something else. By offering water, he wasn't just showing goodwill, he also wanted to test her reaction. Okay, the woman responded, but she didn't move. She was cautious. Probably didn't trust him. But since she had deliberately carried an empty canister, she clearly needed it for something. If she desperately needed water, she wouldn't abandon a potential source just because of a little risk. It had only just started raining outside. If she had been out searching for water before the rain and was forced here by the storm, that would make sense. Water was an invaluable resource in this world. Worth taking risks for. And if not water, then what else would she need such a large canister for? Gasoline? Diesel? That was the only other possibility Lu Xian could think of. His mouth practically watered at the thought. After wandering for so long, he had seen gas stations and knew there were still cars and fuel in this world. Unfortunately, every vehicle he had come across was completely scrapped, beyond repair. Why would she need fuel? Could it be she had a car? If so, he was jealous. Lu Xian had been struggling to find a permanent base. The hardest part of traveling was the journey itself. Since crossing into this world, he had trekked through so many places, dragging along a mechanical dog, trudging forward step by step. Exhausting. If he had a car, he didn't even dare imagine how much easier things would be. If she really did have one, that meant her vehicle had run out of fuel, and she was here to find some. Was that really the case? And was there even a gas station nearby? If she turned out to be like those lunatics he had encountered before, Lu Xian wouldn't hesitate to use his bullets and take a vehicle for himself. But if she wasn't like them, would she be willing to give him a ride? After witnessing the insanity of this world's people, Lu Xian didn't want to become like them. As long as his own safety was assured, he was willing to stick to his principles. But all of this depended on whether the canister was really for gasoline. The woman remained silent. Lu Xian didn't ask directly. He knew that cars were an extremely valuable resource in this world. If she had one and left with the canister, it meant her car had run out of gas. If he blatantly asked about it, she might think he was after her vehicle, leading to an unnecessary fight. Better to be patient and observe. Fortunately, patience was something Lu Xian had honed well in this miserable world. So, he waited quietly. Boom. Lightning flashed, followed by a rumbling thunderclap. Outside, rain poured down in sheets, pounding against the villa's walls. When the white flash of lightning illuminated the scene, Lu Xian could see the slanted lines of rain whipping in through the shattered window, driven by the howling wind. But neither of them moved. Two people, sitting silently in the rain-drenched night. As if they were nothing more than strangers taking shelter in the same abandoned villa, waiting for the storm to pass before parting ways. But the rain lasted all night. The woman never went to fetch water. When dawn finally broke and the sky cleared, she finally spoke. "I'm leaving." Lu Xian was momentarily stunned before replying, "Okay." This time, it was his turn to say okay. For once, the weather hadn't changed. That was a relief. He saw the woman step back into his view, holding her gun high, aimed at him. She walked backward, retreating as she went. So, she had spoken earlier just to pinpoint his location. Lu Xian took note of that. Lesson learned. Then, he raised his gun and aimed back at her. His weapon was a submachine gun. Looked way more intimidating than hers. As long as no one fired, he held the advantage in sheer threat level. The woman kept her gun raised cautiously but showed no intention of pulling the trigger. She backed all the way to where she had placed the metal canister, picked it up, then opened the villa door and stepped out. She didn't take any water? Did she really have a car? Lu Xian was about to send the mechanical dog to follow and check the situation. Although the dog moved stiffly and clumsily, it was actually quite fast. It also seemed to have some kind of special detection system, allowing it to track targets from a distance without being noticed. Perfect for reconnaissance. However, before he could give the dog an order, a gunshot rang out outside. The next moment, the woman suddenly retreated back inside. From beyond the villa walls came a series of eerie, cackling cries. Gg. And there were a lot of them. Lu Xian glanced out the window. Outside, a pack of creatures had appeared. Something between wolves and dogs. They looked familiar. His heart skipped a beat. He had seen these things before, in videos from his past life. Hyenas. Chapter 3. These things love to rip open butts. The hyenas outside looked exactly like proctologists from his past life, cackling gg as if they were responding to each other. They were chasing fiercely, and their bite force was no joke. Nothing like the common hyenas Lu Xian had seen in his past life. The woman retreated into the villa and locked the door, but right after, Lu Xian heard a heavy thud as something slammed against it. Then came the sound of something cracking. A moment later, The lock was yanked outward, leaving a gaping hole. Outside, the hyenas bared their fangs and sank their teeth into the broken lock, yanking and tearing, until they completely shredded it. Then, they burst inside. These things weren't just strong. They were smart. Luckily, the woman had a gun. She immediately fired. Bang! Killing the leading hyena. But these wild beasts, supposedly unfamiliar with humans and weapons, seemed to have already encountered firearms before. They showed no fear at all. The ones in the back leaped over their dead companion and lunged at the woman. Bang! 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 She fired as she backed away. Her aim was frighteningly precise. Even in such a critical situation, she remained calm, taking down 2 more hyenas mid-lunge. Lu Xian noticed that when her bullets didn't hit their vital spots, the hyenas remained terrifyingly active, continuing their charge. If she hadn't followed up with finishing shots, she would have been overwhelmed already. Reaching the sofa, she didn't hesitate. She tossed away the metal canister, braced her hands on the backrest, and vaulted over it, using it as a barrier. Sorry, these things surrounded me. I had no choice but to run here. They're hard to kill. If they swarm me, I'll get injured. That would be a problem. Could even die. She didn't even glance at Lu Xian upstairs as she spoke, keeping her focus on the hyenas. That was the longest sentence he had heard from her so far. Damn, you're actually polite. Lu Xian smirked and said, no problem. Just be careful. These things love to rip open butts. At that, the woman's body visibly tensed. Lu Xian saw more hyenas climbing in through the broken window, preparing to surround her. Without hesitation, he spoke, fall back upstairs. It's easier to defend here. The woman's marksmanship was leagues ahead of his. If their roles were switched, he'd probably already be dead downstairs. But there were too many of these things. No matter how good her aim was, she was still just one person with one gun. These hyenas had already defied every behavior he knew about them. They were fearless, relentless. If she died, Lu Xian wasn't sure he could fend them off with his remaining bullets. So, she couldn't die. Lu Xian was sure of that. He definitely didn't want to get his butt ripped open. The woman reacted quickly. As soon as she heard Lu Xian's words, she began retreating toward the stairs. Bang bang. Another couple of shots fired. As soon as she reached the staircase, she ran out of bullets. Without missing a beat, she ejected the empty magazine and swapped in a fresh one, continuing to fire at the charging hyenas. She had 2 magazines. Throw me the empty one. Lu Xian called from the top of the stairs. Still backing up, the woman didn't hesitate. She tossed the empty magazine backward without looking. Lu Xian caught it, checked it quickly. Different magazine type, but the same caliber. He immediately grabbed bullets from the mechanical dog's pouch and began reloading. Bang 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 bang. The woman kept firing as she climbed the stairs. The moment she reached the top, her gun clicked empty. Here. Lu Xian handed her the freshly loaded magazine. The woman paused slightly, then said, thanks. She took it and reloaded instantly. By now, several hyena corpses were piled up on the stairs. Some lay sprawled across the steps, others had slid down. But the relentless beasts kept charging, unfazed. Still, with Lu Xian and the woman working together. One reloading, the other shooting. They managed to hold the staircase. The woman didn't waste bullets recklessly, either. She remained careful, aiming for vital points. Not bad, knows how to conserve ammo. In this world, frugality was a good habit. Lu Xian felt that, in some ways, this woman was just as competent as he was. Not bad. After losing several more of their own, the hyenas finally stopped their reckless attacks. They began pacing around downstairs, staring up at them. Some moved off, possibly searching for other ways to climb up. But with how high the second floor was, even a human couldn't scale it. Let alone 4-legged creatures. So, the standoff began. Only now did Lu Xian and the woman have time to properly observe each other. Lu Xian openly looked at her. She, on the other hand, stole glances from the corner of her eye. Up close, the woman was even more striking. Her face, roughened by constant exposure to the elements, had a reddish tint. Her dry, cracked lips parted slightly as she caught her breath. And the black tank top she wore outlined her chest, rising and falling with each breath. A bit eye-catching. But Lu Xian had enough self-control. I'm Lu Xian. What's your name? He asked. The woman immediately averted her gaze, pretending she hadn't been looking. As for his question, she had no intention of answering. But the brief flicker of emotion in her otherwise cold, expressionless eyes didn't escape Lu Xian's notice. For a second, she had looked jealous. She glanced at him. What was there to be jealous of? The answer was obvious. Lu Xian chuckled. Handing her another full magazine, he casually said, You carrying that metal canister to get gas? Do you have a car? If you do, how about giving me a lift when we travel? I'll trade you some snow cream for it. Skincare stuff. See how smooth my face is? His skin was indeed smooth. So smooth, it made the woman jealous. But honestly, it wasn't because of any snow cream. His skin had always been good, even before crossing over. Now, after nearly a year of traveling south, enduring wind, sun, and rain, his skin still hadn't suffered at all. Maybe it was just a natural talent. That snow cream? He really did have some. He had scavenged it from Wanchai village. The same place he had called 10,000 Corpses Village in his journal. A full tin, brand new. Because it was pure white, smooth, and had a cream-like texture, it shared the same name and purpose as a product from his past life. But Lu Xian hadn't wasted it. He had saved it, using it to prevent his hands and feet from cracking in extreme weather. In such conditions, damaged hands would affect his grip. As for his feet, no need to even mention it. If they got injured, walking would become difficult, and at a critical moment, that could mean failing to escape. So for Lu Xian, this stuff was extremely useful. But right now, having a car was way more useful. The woman frowned, looking somewhat displeased, but still said nothing. She didn't seem good at hiding her emotions. Just one glance at her expression, and Lu Xian could tell. She was annoyed by his smugness. Her silent frown practically said, "Survive this first before talking nonsense, idiot." No denial. So, she did have a car. Lu Xian had gotten the answer he wanted. Mission accomplished. No need to talk any further. He and the woman waited in silence, observing the pack of hyenas below, seeing how long they planned to hold out. His patience was excellent. The woman's seemed just as strong. Even as the sun began to sink westward, she remained alert. These damn hyenas were persistent too. Fuck. Feeling the discomfort from hunger and dehydration, Lu Xian immediately returned to the bedroom, grabbing 2 bottles of water and 2 packs of instant noodles. He knew that at a time like this, it was stupid to be stingy with supplies. If the woman collapsed from exhaustion, he'd be in trouble too. So, he generously twisted open a bottle of water, placed it within her reach, tore open the noodle pack, and handed it over. Here. The water was from the swimming pool outside. The instant noodles? Looted off a dead Wolfgang member back in Mazu City. Thanks. The woman kept her words brief as she started munching on the noodles. But she didn't touch the water. Even though her cracked lips and hoarse voice made it very obvious that she was thirsty. Lu Xian finished his own noodles but didn't open the second bottle. Instead, he picked up the one he had already uncapped, took a few big gulps, then held it out to her again. Here. The woman hesitated for a moment. Then, finally, she took it and drank deeply. After draining the bottle, she licked her lips. Now noticeably redder. And finally spoke. I'm Yahweh. Chapter 4, Two People's Conditions. When Lu Xian heard the woman say her name, his first thought was, there's hope for a ride. Good. The water and instant noodles weren't given in vain. He carefully scanned downstairs. Many hyenas were dead, but counting inside and out, there were still at least 10 left. These hyenas were smart. At first, they had charged recklessly, but now they had switched tactics. Hiding behind cover to avoid being in the line of fire from above. Because of this, Yahweh couldn't just shoot them all down. Lu Xian searched for a leader among them but couldn't spot one. He had no choice but to keep waiting with Yahweh at the top of the stairs. You know a lot about these wild dogs? Yahweh caught his gaze and asked. Lu Xian replied, not much. Just that these things are all proctologists. I can't even tell which one's the leader. If we could find it, you could just take it out with one shot. After all, he had only seen these creatures in videos before. Social predators that were supposed to live in Africa. This was the first time he had ever heard their eerie GGGG cackles in person. Proctologists. Yahweh muttered the word, visibly tensing again. Lu Xian noticed she was talking a lot more now. The standoff continued. Before long, night fell. Lu Xian noticed the hyenas growing restless and suddenly realized what they were about to do. He immediately gave the mechanical dog a command, Dog, go to the stairs and shine the light on them. Since Yahweh had arrived, the mechanical dog had stayed in its box form, silent and still. This thing was too intelligent. Lu Xian wasn't sure if it was avoiding risks or just lying low because of Yahweh. Either way, it followed his commands without fail. The moment Lu Xian spoke, the mechanical dog shifted back into its canine form. A flash of surprise flickered across Yahweh's face, but she quickly masked it with her usual cold, sharp look. Still, her gaze kept flicking toward the dog. Lu Xian wondered if she was worried it would try to rip her butt open. Darkness quickly took over. It was the first night after the rain. The sky wasn't too cloudy, But there were no stars or moon in sight. Inside the villa, it was pitch black. Especially the staircase against the inner wall, where you couldn't even see your hand in front of your face. GGGG. GGG. GG. The increasingly agitated hyenas suddenly all started calling out, as if communicating. Dog. Lu Xian called out, gripping his submachine gun, both he and Yao Wei on high alert. If she couldn't hold them back, he'd have no choice but to open fire. The next second, two beams of light flared to life, illuminating the staircase. A hyena, charging up under the cover of darkness, was suddenly exposed. Bang! Yao Wei fired without hesitation, perfect headshot. The mechanical dog's glowing eyes didn't linger on the corpse. They immediately turned to the next threat. Another hyena was following close behind. The first body hadn't blocked its path. It leaped over the fallen one. But the moment it hit midair, the sudden burst of light and bullets struck it down. Thud. Two hyena corpses, stacked on the stairs. Gee. The remaining hyenas froze in fear. Their cries cut off instantly. None dared to advance. Watching Yao Wei's marksman-level accuracy, guided by the mechanical dog's lighting, Lu Xian had an idea. He didn't waste time. Dog, scan below. The mechanical dog was long accustomed to Lu Xian's commands. No matter how short the instructions were, it always understood. Immediately, its glowing eyes shifted downward, sweeping the area. In the pitch-black environment, its night vision was unparalleled. One scan. And it caught a hyena. The beast panicked, barely managing to scramble back behind cover. But Yao Wei was faster. Bang. One shot, dead. The rest of the hyenas scattered in terror, fleeing outside. The mechanical dog didn't track them. It was clear they were completely gone. Lu Xian had a thought. Was that last hyena the pack leader? Dog, go check. He issued another command. The mechanical dog wobbled down the stairs and out of the villa. It was too dark to see its small body, but its metal limbs made soft clinking noises against the floor. Sounds that both Lu Xian and Yao Wei followed with their ears. They watched as it reached the villa entrance. Under the faintest starlight, its metallic sheen became just barely visible. Yao Wei's expression changed slightly. She looked at the mechanical dog with something new in her eyes. Envy. Lu Xian had been watching her closely. If he saw even the slightest hint of greed. If she looked like she wanted to take the dog. He would not hesitate to pull the trigger. His submachine gun was already loaded. At this range, in a surprise attack, there was no way he'd miss. But she didn't make a move. She only looked jealous. A moment later, the mechanical dog returned, its glowing eyes still shining. That was its signal. If the hyenas came back, its eyes would flash twice. Since the glow remained steady, it meant everything was safe. All clear. Lu Xian said. Yao Wei let out a breath. Thanks. She had already thanked him so many times, she'd probably lost count. Lu Xian finally relaxed. Now, he was certain. This woman wasn't like those bastards from the wolf gang or dog gang. She was a good person. At least, at her core, she was. That made things easier. Otherwise, he wouldn't have dared to casually bring up a request. If you really want to thank me, give me a ride. This place isn't safe anymore. I need to find a new spot. He said to Yao Wei. She met his gaze with eyes as calm as a still pond. Then she said, trade for the snow cream. Your words. Under the glow of the mechanical dog's eyes, Yao Wei's face was half lit, half shadowed, making the sun and wind marks on her skin indistinct. Making her look even better. But her gaze grew even colder, as if completely unyielding. Lu Xian said, then you have to make sure you drop me off somewhere suitable for survival before letting me off. Yao Wei hesitated for a long moment before finally nodding. Okay. So, Lu Xian started packing, stuffing everything he needed into his backpack, making sure to take what was necessary. He also secured the items onto the mechanical dog as needed. Even the empty bottles from the water they had finished. He didn't discard them. Instead, he went to the outdoor swimming pool and refilled them. Only now did Yao Wei follow suit, taking out empty bottles from her own backpack and filling them with water. As for the metal canister, she still carried it. Just as Lu Xian had guessed, she was looking for a gas station to fill it with gasoline. While waiting for Yao Wei to finish filling her water, Lu Xian went to check the hyena corpses. He instructed the mechanical dog to scan them. After its eyes flickered, Lu Xian sighed. What a waste. What's a waste? Yao Wei had finished filling her bottles and stepped out to ask. She had already stuffed the bottles back into her massive backpack, which sagged significantly under the weight. Looked like she had taken quite a bit of water. What a waste that all this dog meat is poisonous and can't be eaten. Lu Xian replied. Yao Wei glanced at the hyena corpses and also said, what a waste. Without lingering, The two of them left the villa together. Chapter 5, Gas Station Treasure Hunt. Outside the villa, an east-west road stretched ahead, already cracked. Weeds had grown thick along the roadside, creeping onto the pavement, squeezing into the fissures. Lu Xian looked left and right and asked, "Which way are we going?" "West." Yao Wei answered, then turned and started walking west. Lu Xian followed and asked, "Are we heading to refuel or to the car?" Yao Wei, "Refuel." Lu Xian. 2 sentences, 3 words total. To his ears, it might as well have been just go and India. This woman would never use 2 words when one would do. The problem was, he wasn't some transcendent hero who had abandoned worldly desires, and the woman in front of him, with her fine, dense hair and striking beauty, was definitely not some bald monk 500 years in the future. Then again, thinking about it, this woman was far more formidable than a monk. Deadly accurate with a gun, incredibly strong, and had insane stamina. Just like him. They had endured an entire night and an entire day at Villa 272 and still had energy to spare. Lu Xian had never understood why his strength and endurance had increased so dramatically. Seeing that Yao Wei's condition was similar, maybe she knew something. But he didn't ask. They weren't familiar enough yet, and they were both still wary of each other. Showing too much curiosity wouldn't be wise. Right now, he could probably hold out for another night. He wondered how long Yao Wei could last. With these thoughts in mind, he followed Yao Wei westward. They passed by number 274, number 275, and number 276 on Jiang Road, but number 273 was nowhere to be seen. These houses were far from Villa 272. They were all standalone courtyard homes but not villas. Nowhere near as grand. Having been abandoned for years, the houses had collapsed. As Lu Xian approached, he saw roofs caved in, brick walls toppled, and tangled vines covering nearly everything. The courtyards were overgrown with weeds, leaving no place to step. He had seen this countless times on his journey south. Buildings without reinforced concrete frames collapsed way too easily, and they rarely had anything valuable inside. Unless he was truly desperate for supplies, Lu Xian wouldn't bother with places like these. Past number 276, Jiang Road stretched into open wilderness. Under the night sky, sparse starlight cast faint illumination over the land. The tall grass bent with the wind, forming waves of shifting darkness. Amidst these black waves, a lone building stood by the roadside, too far away to make out clearly. Just a small speck in the distance. Lu Xian guessed it was the gas station. A thought struck him, and he asked, "Are you sure there's gas there? What if it's empty?" "Worth a shot." Yao Wei replied. "All right." 2 more words than usual this time. Lu Xian chuckled. She wasn't wrong. What else wasn't a gamble? On this journey, everywhere was a gamble. Fail to scavenge supplies, and you're dead. He had always been lucky. This time should be no different. 2 people and a dog pressed on in the dark, listening to the howling wind as they walked. After about half an hour, they finally reached the building. It was a gas station. Yao Wei quickened her pace. Lu Xian asked, "How did you know this gas station was here?" "Old world map." Yao Wei answered. That made sense to Lu Xian. Gas stations had all been built in the old world. If she had an old world map marking these locations, then finding them would be no problem. But she had no intention of showing him the map, and Lu Xian had no intention of asking. Was it a paper map or a digital one? In this world, electronic devices weren't reliable. But would a paper map even mark locations like this in detail? Regardless, if he ever got the chance, he'd make sure the mechanical dog scanned that map. Once he parted ways with Yao Wei, having a map would help him navigate instead of just blindly heading south. "Dog, go check it out," Lu Xian whispered, issuing a new command outside the gas station. The place was pitch black, seemingly deserted, but he remained cautious out of habit. The mechanical dog waddled forward, short legs wobbling as it disappeared into the darkness. Yao Wei halted and watched it go, a flicker of envy in her eyes. But Lu Xian had already figured out her personality. A single glance was enough to catch the subtle change in her expression. The 2 crouched nearby, waiting for the mechanical dog's report. Lu Xian sighed and said, "Honestly, this mechanical dog isn't great for scouting." "Too loud." Yao Wei said, "Better than nothing." "True." Lu Xian nodded. "It'd be great if it had 4 wheels instead." Yao Wei. A short while later, 2 beams of light lit up inside the gas station. Lu Xian and Yao Wei immediately recognized them. The mechanical dog's glowing eyes. "Let's go. It's safe," Lu Xian said, standing up. He and Yao Wei stepped into the gas station. Yao Wei didn't head straight for the pumps. Instead, she circled the main building, searching. Soon, she found the electrical panel mounted outside, flipped it open, and peered inside. Lu Xian had the mechanical dog lighted up with its eyes. Yao Wei glanced back. Thanks. Lu Xian just smiled, saying nothing. He watched her work carefully but couldn't make sense of it. Whatever she did, she seemed to find a specific circuit. Then, after a bit of fiddling, she set down her backpack, pulled something out, connected it. And the lights on the fuel pumps flickered on. Impressive. Lu Xian praised. Yao Wei said, found it. She meant whatever device she had pulled from her backpack. That's still impressive. Lu Xian said. His mechanical dog was found too, after all. With the power restored, Yao Wei quickly moved to inspect the fuel pumps. Lu Xian followed. There were 4 pumps in total. 2 screens lit up, 2 remained dark. Yao Wei walked straight to one of the functioning pumps and started working on it. Lu Xian left her to it and took the mechanical dog into the gas station's main building. The entrance had a glass door, long since shattered, leaving the doorway wide open. Who knew how many times the place had been ransacked? But since he was already here, he might as well take a look. Lu Xian followed behind the mechanical dog and stepped inside. The building housed a small convenience store. There were 2 or 3 rows of shelves, all completely bare. Long since picked clean. Scattered across the floor were bits of useless junk, covered in a thick layer of dust. Lu Xian pushed aside some cobwebs and checked every corner. Then, he moved to the cashier counter and a back office. Desks, cabinets, and drawers. Every single one had been left open and emptied, now coated in dust and crawling with cobwebs. As expected. He gave up completely and walked back out. On his way, his gaze happened to sweep across the floor, where he spotted a few torn open packages, their contents scattered in pieces. They were toy motorcycles. It was unclear whether they had been stomped on or smashed. Maybe whoever ransacked this place had broken them in frustration, since they were useless in the apocalypse. But the wheels were still intact. Chapter 6, A Cautious Mind is Invaluable. The lights outside suddenly went out. Yao Wei wanted to conserve electricity. After filling up the fuel barrel, she quickly went to the electrical panel, removed the equipment, and put it back into her backpack. Inside the station building, the light from the mechanical dog became a little too glaring for a moment. However, Lu Xian quickly adjusted and went over to pick up the tires. There were 3 toy motorcycles on the ground, all the same size and specifications, with 6 tires in total. Lu Xian picked one up and examined it under the mechanical dog's eye light. It was well preserved and of good quality. Usable. At the station building entrance, Yao Wei walked in. Seeing the toy tire in Lu Xian's hand, her gaze carried a hint of doubt, but she didn't ask. Using the spread of light from the mechanical dog's eyes, Lu Xian caught Yao Wei's expression and took the initiative to explain, just collecting some things to make a flat cart. If we ever need it, we can attach the cart to the dog and have it pull some stuff. What do you think? Yao Wei glanced at the tires in Lu Xian's hands, then at the mechanical dog, whose eyes were gleaming with excitement. She shook her head and said, no need. We have a car, and we can carry our stuff ourselves. I'm just messing around. Think about it. These tires are so small, the flat cart would be ridiculously low. It'd be inconvenient for the dog to pull it anyway, Lu Xian said. Thinking about it, since he was hitching a ride in Yao Wei's car now, even if the cart had bigger wheels, it wouldn't be of much use. Besides, the dog was corgi-sized. So tiny that even a small cart attached to it wouldn't be of much use. But this was something he had been obsessed with ever since he traveled alone from the north to the south. He always wanted to hang something on the dog. The leather pouch it had now still wasn't quite enough. So, in the end, it really was just an obsession, and he had been collecting things mindlessly. Forget it. If nothing else, he could just play around with it later. If it turned out to be useless, he could use it as a hidden weapon instead. Wait a minute. From what Yao Wei just said, did it mean he could stay in the car indefinitely and wouldn't have to get off? He glanced at Yao Wei, but seeing no reaction from her, he sighed and said, too bad I only have a knife. I don't have a screwdriver or a wrench, so I can't even try making a small cart. I can only collect the parts for now and figure it out later. I have them, Yao Wei said. Thanks, then, Lu Xian replied. Yao Wei added, I might need to use the dog too. Then, without saying more, she grabbed the fuel barrel and walked out. Lu Xian watched her back and smiled slightly. Who would have thought this woman could make a joke? After leaving the gas station, Lu Xian told the mechanical dog to turn off its eye lights. In this apocalypse, both of them had long since adapted to walking in the dark. As long as they were careful, they wouldn't stumble into ditches. On the other hand, walking around with a light on could easily make them a target for whatever might be lurking in the darkness. Lu Xian noticed that Yao Wei hadn't collected much gasoline. Her iron barrel was only about half full. But he could understand the reasoning. This way, it was easier to carry. And even if she filled the entire barrel, it still wouldn't be much for a car's fuel tank. Instead of hauling a full load now, it was better to take a bit, top up the tank, and then drive back here for more. As they returned, they passed by Jiang Road number 276, 275, and 274. When they walked past number 272 villa, the place was silent inside and out. Seemed like the hyenas hadn't returned. Even so, neither Lu Xian nor Yao Wei planned to linger. Lu Xian followed Yao Wei as they continued forward. Jiang Road turned into a downhill slope. Halfway down, Lu Xian spotted number 270 and number 269. Number 271 and number 273 were gone. At the bottom of the slope, they walked for another half hour. Trees lined both sides of the road, lush and dense. If this were the old world, Lu Xian would have loved to jog or take a walk in a place like this, breathing in the fresh air. But in this world, places like this only spelled danger. Who knew what could be hiding in there? Looking at Yao Wei, she had hidden her car in the woods. Lu Xian followed Yao Wei as she weaved through the trees. After walking a short distance, they reached a small slope, where a car sat at the bottom. The car had massive tires and a high chassis, its entire body wrapped in iron plates patched together in several places. Even the windows were covered with iron mesh. At first glance, Lu Xian immediately liked the car. In this world, a vehicle like this felt way more secure than any sports car. However, a question lingered in his mind. He glanced at the ground several times. Where were the tire tracks? I cleared them before I left, Yao Wei answered, noticing his confusion. She didn't rush to get in or refill the gas tank. Instead, she first walked around the car to inspect it. In the old world, this would have been a standard car check for a driving test. But now, it was not just about checking the car's condition. It was also about scanning for hidden dangers. Because of that, Yao Wei was extremely thorough. Lu Xian helped her check as well. After finishing the inspection, Yao Wei finally opened the car door, took off her backpack, and tossed it inside. Opening the fuel tank, she pulled out a metal funnel from the car and used it to pour gasoline from the iron barrel. Once done, she put everything away properly and told Lu Xian, "Get in." The interior of the car was incredibly spacious, with 2 rows of seats. The iron barrel and funnel were placed in the trunk. The trunk was so big that even several people could fit inside with no problem. Lu Xian opened the rear door and glanced at the trunk. It was packed with various supplies. There was even a medical kit and a toolbox. No idea where Yao Wei had scavenged them from. "Sit in the front," Yao Wei ordered firmly, leaving no room for refusal. Lu Xian chuckled. "I was just putting my stuff away, not planning to sit in the back." This woman was wary of him ambushing her from behind. Well, that was normal. If their roles were reversed, he'd do the same. In this world, who could truly trust anyone? Just being allowed to sit in the same car was already a huge gesture of goodwill. After stowing his backpack and shutting the door, Lu Xian opened the front passenger door, grabbed the mechanical dog from the ground, and got into the car. Since Yao Wei didn't trust Lu Xian, she obviously wouldn't trust the mechanical dog either. Even though it was just a mechanical dog, it was still Lu Xian's dog. So, being considerate, Lu Xian placed the dog directly on the front passenger seat floor. This was when the dog's small size proved useful. The front footwell had more than enough space for it. "Where's your screwdriver and wrench?" Lu Xian asked. "In the trunk. I'll give them to you after we find a place to rest once we finish refueling," Yao Wei replied. That was a long sentence. Almost 20 whole words. Lu Xian suddenly felt a little regretful. If he hadn't run out of water for his pen, he could have kept a diary counting how many words this woman spoke in a day. Yao Wei started the engine, the headlights lit up, and the car drove off down the road. Lu Xian leaned back against the seat, only to find it stiff and uncomfortable. He watched the dim yellow halogen light cut through the darkness, illuminating the road ahead. Then, looking around the pitch-black interior, with faint glows seeping through the dashboard and center console buttons, he suddenly felt a sense of nostalgia. How long had it been since he last sat in a car? So nostalgic. Lu Xian turned his head to look at Yao Wei. The woman was driving with her nerves still tense, maintaining her vigilance against him. He smiled and said, "Relax, I'm not going to do anything. You're the one controlling the car. If I tried to attack you, you could just flip the car. What good would that do me?" Hearing this, Yao Wei was silent for a moment before replying, "All right." Then, she did seem to relax a little. The car passed by Jiang Road again, and they once more saw number 272 villa. But this time, the villa was nothing more than an irrelevant roadside scene, flashing past in their view. They drove all the way to the abandoned gas station. Yao Wei parked directly beside the fuel pump they had previously confirmed was still usable, But she didn't turn off the engine. She observed from inside the car for a while. After making sure no one was coming out, she opened the door, grabbed her gun, and got out. Lu Xian followed suit, mimicking her actions. However, while his handgun was tucked at his waist, he held a submachine gun in his hands. Chapter 7, Open Eyes, Close Eyes. Lu Xian and Yao Wei circled around outside the station building for a check, then sent the mechanical dog inside. Once the mechanical dog's eyes lit up, they fully confirmed that the gas station was just as before. No danger. This was a necessary procedure every time they arrived at a new place. To be honest, Lu Xian hadn't been as cautious as Yao Wei before. He would only carefully inspect a location the first time he set foot in it and would relax afterward. But Yao Wei's approach made sense to him. After all, safety was no small matter, so he followed suit. To be honest, he had learned quite a lot from this woman. Afterward, Yao Wei took out the device that could power circuits from her backpack and walked toward the electrical panel on the outer side of the station. Lu Xian noticed that when Yao Wei looked at the square device in her hands, she frowned slightly, as if hesitating and feeling reluctant. What's wrong? It's almost out of power. Hearing these 4 words, Lu Xian immediately understood. That thing must be some kind of power bank, and now it was running low. Probably only a few more uses left. Or maybe even just one. No wonder Yao Wei felt reluctant. Come to think of it, battery technology in this world was pretty advanced. Just look at the dog, then look at the power bank in Yao Wei's hand. The old world never had anything this powerful. However, Lu Xian had a feeling that the energy technology in the mechanical dog wasn't just some ordinary battery. What kind of battery could keep the dog bouncing around for so long? Walking, scanning, eyes lighting up, and even powering a villa? He suspected that inside the dog was either an arc reactor or something similar. He was really curious about it. If it weren't for his lack of technical skills and the risk of dismantling the dog without being able to put it back together, he would have taken it apart to see. You should save it for later, Lu Xian said to Yao Wei, then turned to the mechanical dog, which had just come bouncing out of the station building. Dog, you do it. Yao Wei was a bit stunned and looked down at the tiny dog on the ground. The mechanical dog's eyes glowed as it turned to scan the electrical panel mounted on the outer wall of the station building. This was the process for checking the circuits. Lu Xian instructed, just connect the circuit for the fuel pump. The mechanical dog quickly located the circuit. Its body opened up on both sides, and black cables with connectors shot out, heading straight for the electrical panel. As the cables entered the panel, the light in the dog's eyes dimmed. Its entire body was lifted by the black cables, just like when it had powered the villa before. Back to the wall, standing motionless. However, back at the villa, it had been stuck to the wall. Here, the electrical panel protruded outward, so the dog was left hanging, its body swaying, unable to stabilize immediately. Buzz. The fuel pump's light turned on. Yao Wei turned to look and then stared at the mechanical dog, eyes wide in amazement. Amazing. She sighed. This was the 3rd time Lu Xian had heard a shift in her emotions. The first was when she had repeated proctologist to herself in disbelief. The second was when she had said what a waste upon realizing the proctologist wasn't edible. 3 emotional reactions. All because of the dog. Consider this an early repayment for lending me the wrench and screwdriver, Lu Xian said. But Yao Wei still said, thank you. True to her frugal and energy-saving habits, she hurried over to the car, operated the fuel pump, opened the fuel tank, and started refueling. Once the tank was completely full, she said to Lu Xian, done. Lu Xian then instructed the dog to disconnect. The mechanical dog retracted its black cables, dropped to the ground with a plop, and wobbled back to Lu Xian's side. Yao Wei's eyes remained on the dog the entire time. She seemed fascinated by it. It wasn't until Lu Xian picked up the mechanical dog that she finally said, let's go. Both of them got into the car, closing the doors with a bang. Yao Wei started the engine and continued westward. By this time, the moon had risen high. It was likely past midnight. However, neither Lu Xian nor Yao Wei had a watch. The car had a clock display, but it was long out of sync, so they had no way of knowing the exact time. After driving far away from the gas station, a mountain appeared ahead. Yao Wei drove straight toward the mountain. As the forest grew denser, she said, let's go. Lu Xian turned to look. Seeing that Yao Wei had opened the door and stepped out, he followed suit. The two of them scouted the surroundings and found a concealed path where they could drive the car in. Only then did they get back in. Actually, the dog could have done this job, Lu Xian said as he got back into the car. Yao Wei continued driving toward their chosen destination and replied, can't always trouble you. 8 words. So polite. Lu Xian chuckled, casually commenting before falling silent. After arriving at their destination, Yao Wei turned off the lights and the engine. Then, She called Lu Xian to help erase the tire tracks before they returned to the car. This woman was clearly used to doing such things. She handled the tracks with skill and efficiency. Lu Xian learned another trick. Back in the car, Yao Wei reclined her seat, removed her leather jacket, and covered herself with it. Sleep. Lu Xian followed her lead and reclined the passenger seat. He closed his eyes, holding the submachine gun in his arms, and deliberately regulated his breathing to sound as if he had fallen asleep. Then, he listened carefully. After ensuring that there was no movement beside him, he let himself relax slightly. Meanwhile, beside him, Yao Wei only opened her eyes at this moment. She remained on high alert, her hand still gripping the gun under her jacket. She didn't turn her head, only using the corner of her eye to glance at him. Then, as if reassured, she closed her eyes again. After a while, Lu Xian turned to his side, smacked his lips, and continued holding the submachine gun in his arms. After waiting a little longer, he cracked his eyes open slightly and secretly peeked toward the driver's seat. No movement. Good. He closed his eyes again. A while later, Yao Wei also shifted slightly, barely opening her eyes, sneaking another glance. After that, under her jacket, the grip on her gun finally loosened just a little. By this point, both of them were certain that, whether the other was truly asleep or not, at the very least, neither had any intention of killing the other. Only then could they truly let themselves fall asleep. As they slept, the mechanical dog transformed into its fox mode and quietly rested at Lu Xian's feet. Out of the two humans and one dog, it was the one that slept the soundest. Just like that, the night passed. As the sky brightened, morning sunlight filtered through the forest, and suddenly, a sound rang out. The two people in the car jolted awake. Following the sound, they saw a wild boar not far outside the vehicle. It wasn't too big, but not small either. The wild boars in this apocalypse looked lean, with not much meat on them, but enough for 2 good meals. Luck was on their side today. The weather was warm, the cold wave hadn't arrived yet, and it was a clear, sunny day. And now, first thing in the morning, prey had came right to them. Unlike the hyenas, this one should be edible. Lu Xian immediately raised his submachine gun and slowly rolled down the window. Yao Wei's car had manual windows. Chapter 8, Make things easier for yourself. Of course, Lu Xian didn't fire. Knowing his own marksmanship, he didn't want to waste bullets, nor did he want to reveal too much in front of Yao Wei. He was just making a move to set an example, letting Yao Wei know what needed to be done. But Yao Wei didn't reach for her gun. Instead, she pressed down on Lu Xian's hand, signaling him not to act rashly. Then, Lu Xian watched as Yao Wei crouched, sprang up, and leaped from the front row to the back. She flipped through the trunk for a moment and surprisingly pulled out a bow. It must have been buried under something, which was why Lu Xian hadn't noticed it before. The bow had a sight window and a narrow rest, blending industrial craftsmanship with traditional design, giving it a sturdy and reliable look. Easy to handle. It seemed to be an American hunting bow. Was this the archery development of this world? He wondered if compound bows or recurve bows existed here. Yao Wei reached with her other hand and hooked out a quiver, which was filled with arrows. She said to Lu Xian, "Use this, it's safer." Safer. Meaning it wouldn't make noise and alert unknown dangers. Lu Xian immediately put away his gun and said, "You do it." So Yao Wei, still in the back row, rolled down the window. She didn't open the car door to step out, afraid of startling the wild boar ahead. She pulled out 3 arrows from the quiver, held 2 in her mouth, and gripped one in her hand. Then, she bent down, leaned her upper body out of the back window, and hooked her legs around the headrest of the rear seat to stabilize herself. Damn, that's cool. Lu Xian marveled in his heart. He wanted to learn that move. He couldn't see Yao Wei drawing the bow outside the car, only her legs hooked up and her arched waist tensed. Her clothes and pants clung to her form, outlining smooth, powerful curves. Strong, healthy, and full of beauty. Whoosh! The sharp whistle of an arrow slicing through the air rang outside the car. Lu Xian followed the sound and saw that the arrow had struck the wild boar's neck. Oh! The wild boar let out a wail but didn't collapse. It staggered and turned to flee. Blood seeped from its neck, but it was already too weak to run fast. Yao Wei loosened her legs from the headrest, propped herself on the window frame, and with a swift motion, leaped out of the car. At this point, stealth was no longer necessary, so Lu Xian got out as well. Turning his head, he saw Yao Wei retrieve an arrow from her mouth, knock it, and fire again with a sharp whoosh. This arrow struck the wild boar's hind leg. The boar stumbled and finally collapsed. Yao Wei took the last arrow from her mouth, fitted it to the bowstring, and cautiously approached the boar. Lu Xian followed closely. As they neared, he saw the wild boar had already stopped breathing and finally relaxed. Amazing. He praised her. Back at the gas station, Yao Wei had praised his mechanical dog in the same way. Now, it was his turn to praise her. Yao Wei said nothing and quietly retrieved her arrows. After pulling them out, she carefully inspected each one. Confirming they were intact and undamaged, she seemed pleased and went to the car to find a cloth to wipe off the blood and flesh from the arrows. However, her satisfaction was hidden deep inside. She wouldn't show it to Lu Xian. Lu Xian wasn't paying attention to her anyway. The mechanical dog had already transformed back from its box form, jumped down from the car, and trotted over. Lu Xian sent it to inspect the wild boar's body. After confirming it was safe to eat, he asked Yao Wei, "Do you want to handle it, or should I?" "I'll do it." Yao Wei was quick to volunteer. Lu Xian suspected she was afraid he might poison the meat. That was fine. He had the mechanical dog, so he wasn't worried about her poisoning him either. He'd just let her handle it. "Then I'll set up the fire wrap," Lu Xian said. After thinking for a moment, he asked, "Do you want to wash the meat with water? If we run out, we can go back to the villa and get more." Having survived in this world for so long, he had processed meat without water many times. Back then, the priority was getting protein and fat, along with killing bacteria through high heat. Taste and cleanliness were secondary concerns. But they weren't far from Villa 272, so fetching water wasn't a big hassle. No need to be overly frugal. Washing the wild boar meat would remove the gamey smell and improve the taste significantly. Then eating wouldn't just be about replenishing energy. It would also be a treat for their taste buds and mental well-being. Yao Wei shook her head without speaking and had already taken out the knife to start bleeding the boar. Lu Xian tried to persuade her, "We passed by the villa twice before and didn't see any hyenas. Those things might have scattered already. Maybe your shot killed their leader. Either way, they won't stay there guarding the place forever. Besides, we're driving this big beast of yours. Those things will be cautious and won't attack us easily. We just grab some water and leave. No risk. As for the fuel, with the dog powering the gas station, we won't have to use your device. We can refill the tank later. We're living in this world, but if we have the chance to make things easier for ourselves, we should take it. Staying tense all the time will drive us crazy." Yao Wei suddenly turned to look at Lu Xian. Her knife, stained red, was still dripping blood. Staring at him like that made him a little uneasy. But for some reason, Lu Xian vaguely felt that there was a hint of softness in her gaze. She stared at him for a long moment before turning back to continue processing the wild boar. But as she worked, she finally spoke a single word. "All right." Lu Xian studied her carefully, then went to the car and took out half of his water supply. He asked, "I'll use half of mine, and you use half of yours. That okay?" Yao Wei shook her head to indicate no problem, but then she added, "I'll get it myself." She didn't want Lu Xian rummaging through her bag and seeing what she had. So Yao Wei went to get her own water and continued processing the wild boar. Meanwhile, Lu Xian set up the fire wrap. He had several scavenged lighters in his collection, so starting a fire wasn't an issue. By the time the fire rack was ready, Yao Wei had already skinned the boar and separated the meat and organs. Blood had pooled on the ground, yet barely a drop had stained her. She worked efficiently. Better than he could. Lu Xian thought to himself, then suddenly remembered something and asked, "What I just said? Has someone told you that before?" Yao Wei was silent for a while, then nodded. "My mom." As expected. No wonder she had changed her attitude so suddenly. All those novels and TV dramas from his past life hadn't been for nothing. Situations like this were easy to analyze. "Which part?" Lu Xian asked. He guessed it was probably the last sentence, but he still asked anyway. "Don't stay tense all the time. Try to make things easier for yourself. Be a little kinder to yourself." Yao Wei said sullenly. She said it before she died. Chapter 9, Taste or Nutrition. After answering that question, Yao Wei seemed to lose interest in continuing the conversation. Seeing this, Lu Xian didn't press the topic further. Instead, he contributed something valuable. Salt that he had gotten in Mazu City. He still had some salt left from when he left Dongmen County's Wanchai village, but that was for his daily use. He only used tiny amounts when necessary, unwilling to waste it. This salt, however, came from a different batch. It was a decent amount, packed in a plastic bag, and had belonged to a member of the Wolf Gang. That gang member had carried it on him, and when Lu Xian gunned him down with his submachine gun, a kitchen knife had fallen by his side. The knife was old and worn, full of nicks and chips, yet the man had still kept it. Probably the Wolf Gang's cook. This much salt was likely meant to supply the entire gang. Now, it all belonged to Lu Xian. Yao Wei was slightly stunned by Lu Xian's generosity. Lu Xian smiled and said, "You should treat yourself better. I'm eating too." "Thanks." Yao Wei muttered a quiet thanks and took the salt. She started washing the meat, doing so with great care to avoid wasting even a single drop of water. Once cleaned, she skewered the meat on wooden racks and rubbed salt on it. Since the salt wasn't hers, she used it sparingly, trying to save more for Lu Xian. After seasoning the meat, she pulled out a lighter and lit the firewood that Lu Xian had already chopped and stacked under the fire rack. She had a lighter of her own, saving Lu Xian from using his. Lu Xian thought about helping, but quickly realized that he wasn't as efficient as Yao Wei when it came to this kind of work. Instead of being useful, he was only disrupting her rhythm, so he wisely stepped aside. Since she was busy, he found something else to do. He called over the mechanical dog, picked it up, and examined its metal legs closely. After carefully inspecting the dog's feet, he confirmed that there were screws and gear mechanisms that could be removed with a screwdriver and wrench. As for whether he could attach wheels, that was something he'd have to test later. Not that he was particularly confident. It was just an experiment. If it didn't work, so be it. He wasn't a professional anyway. But the reason he wasn't testing it now was that the mechanical dog had something else to do. Lu Xian had set up a two-tiered meat rack, and Yao Wei had filled it completely, hanging 2 whole rows of skewered meat over the fire. She was incredibly skilled, expertly separating bone from meat and cutting the pieces small enough to ensure they cooked evenly and were properly disinfected. Lu Xian then assigned the mechanical dog to assist her. As she rotated the meat rack, the mechanical dog continuously scanned the roasting meat with its glowing eyes. When the dog's eyes light up, that means the meat is done, Lu Xian told Yao Wei. It can detect parasites, toxins, and other issues inside the meat, confirming whether it's safe to eat. This way, we can cook the meat just right. Fully cooked but not burned. A flash of envy crossed Yao Wei's eyes as she looked at the mechanical dog. Having a mechanical dog like this would be amazing. But she had another question for Lu Xian: how do I read its signals? These 6 words were clearly forced out, unlike her earlier, more natural reactions. Lu Xian replied, just watch if its eyes light up. Yao Wei nodded and continued flipping the meat, occasionally glancing at the dog's eyes for the signal. Meanwhile, Lu Xian chopped more firewood to ensure they wouldn't run out. This was a skill he had gradually mastered after arriving in this world. By now, he was so proficient that he felt like, if this were a Wuxia world, he'd at least be a mid-level expert with his wood chopping techniques. Unfortunately, this wasn't a Wuxia world. Everyone here used guns. Including himself, even if his aim wasn't great. Carrying an armful of chopped wood back, Lu Xian happened to see the mechanical dog's eyes light up as Yao Wei took the cooked meat off the rack. Noticing his return, Yao Wei handed him a piece of roasted pork first before taking one for herself. The meat was tender and fully cooked, though the flavor wasn't great. But it was good enough. It was edible. In the past, the mechanical dog had only cared about whether food was toxic or safe to eat, completely ignoring whether it was cooked. It had taken Lu Xian a long time to train it to this point. In a world where resources were scarce, this was already pretty good. At least the meat had some salt and was fully cooked. Back when firewood was limited, he had eaten his fair share of cold, half-cooked game. The 2 of them quietly chewed their food without speaking. After finishing 2 pieces each, Lu Xian suggested, why don't we roast the rest a little longer? Cooking it to a higher temperature will make it taste better. Yao Wei frowned and said, wasteful. Seems like she understood how to retain the meat's nutrients. Lu Xian smiled and said, you should treat yourself better. Savoring good flavors helps maintain mental well-being. We've already replenished enough fat and protein with this meal. Why not roast the rest thoroughly and enjoy it? Besides, we can't store this meat for long anyway. The weather here fluctuated between extreme heat and cold, making long-term preservation difficult. After hesitating for a moment, Yao Wei didn't insist on her stance. She roasted the remaining meat thoroughly, letting it sizzle with oil and release a rich, smoky aroma. That's good enough, Lu Xian reminded her. So Yao Wei stopped roasting. This time, the meat was entirely different. Crispy and fragrant, with the sizzling fat and salt making it incredibly appetizing. Lu Xian and Yao Wei quickly devoured all of it. After finishing, Lu Xian couldn't help but sigh, if only we had cumin. What? Yao Wei asked. The word didn't seem familiar to her. A kind of seasoning. If we ever scavenge some, I'll let you try it. Lu Xian replied. Yao Wei didn't respond, acting as if she hadn't heard him. To her, his words were no different from an empty promise. There was still plenty of meat left on the wild boar's body. Even after reading their fill, about half remained. That was actually quite a lot. Even though the wild boar wasn't particularly large, it was still a full-grown pig, and its weight wasn't insignificant. Lu Xian felt like his stomach was like a balloon. Capable of starving for days when necessary but also expanding massively when food was available. Apparently, Yao Wei was the same way. It felt oddly nice to have someone else just as weird as himself. The 2 of them packed up, loading the remaining meat and tools back into the car. As long as the weather didn't get too hot, the meat could still be stored for a little while. Enough to eat later that night or the next day. Lu Xian casually remarked, if only the weather suddenly turned cold. Then we could keep the meat longer. It was just an offhand comment. If the weather did get cold, it would help preserve the pork but bring many other problems. But just as he finished speaking, a sudden gust of icy wind swept through, rustling the trees and sending leaves fluttering to the ground. The wind lashed against their faces, stinging like a blade. Lu Xian quickly pulled a thick jacket from his backpack and put it on, grumbling, "Are my words really this powerful? In that case, when is the sky going to drop some supplies for us? I don't ask for much. Just more canned food would be nice." That was practically a wish upon the wind. Of course, nothing happened. Yao Wei pulled on the leather jacket she had tied around her waist the day before and couldn't help muttering, "Jinx." Chapter 10, Cold and Heat. Yao Wei's tone was gloomy, growing more and more emotional. Both of them got into the car. Yao Wei started the engine and followed the small path they had come from. Once they reached the road, they headed straight for the villa at 272 Jiang Road. The cold wind rustled through the trees, making the leaves whisper. The whole world seemed to lose its vitality in an instant. But this was just the beginning. Lu Xun, who had experienced this kind of weather change countless times, knew that after a while, many leaves on the trees would freeze and shatter into fragments, scattering everywhere. At that time, it would be as if all life had vanished from the world. Looking around, there wouldn't be a single living thing in sight. In such an extreme environment, people's spirits would inevitably sink. One couldn't help but wonder. What's the point of living in a world like this? Enduring suffering day after day, wouldn't it be better to just die? That was why Lu Xun constantly reminded himself to stay in a good mood. As long as he was alive, hope would always be there. Thinking about a wild boar still in the trunk, he felt a little better. Now that it was cold, they didn't have to worry about the meat spoiling. When mealtime came, they'd have a hearty feast. Wasn't that something to look forward to? Comforting himself with this thought, he turned to glance at Yao Wei. The car didn't have air conditioning, and the steering wheel was freezing. The cold was so intense that even the engine's warm air had no effect. The woman kept shifting her fingers as she steered, unable to fully grip the wheel with all 10 fingers. She was as indifferent as ever, her expression matching the frigid weather perfectly. How did she regulate her emotions? Fog started to form on the car windows, blocking the view. Yao Wei had to keep wiping the glass with a cloth to clear the white mist and regain visibility. "I'll do it." Lu Xun took the cloth from Yao Wei's hand and helped wipe the front windshield so she could focus on driving. Just like that, the two worked together as they made their way to Jiang Road. The cloth in Lu Xun's hand quickly became damp and cold, but he had no choice but to endure the freezing sensation and keep working. Finally, the car arrived outside 272 Jiang Road. Yao Wei stepped on the brake. Lu Xun let Dog out first to scout the area. Once he confirmed there were no issues, he and Yao Wei grabbed their bottles and got out of the car. Inside the villa, several hyena corpses were gone, and the remaining ones had been stripped to the bone, frozen stiff. He figured the hyenas must have returned. When scavengers get hungry, they'll even eat their own kind. If his guess was right, then they didn't have to worry now. The hyenas had already eaten their fill and taken the remaining corpses with them, so they wouldn't be coming back anytime soon. The two of them walked to the swimming pool in the yard. Thankfully, the water had already thawed. Lu Xun had Dog check it, and the water was still drinkable for them. Yao Wei immediately started filling their bottles. Lu Xun, however, suddenly remembered something. He came out of the bathroom and glanced at the wall. On the wall, there was a black-edged switch panel that controlled the villa's lights. Next to the switch, there was a white control screen, also covered in dust like the switch. Even so, Lu Xun could still make out 2 rows of buttons on the control panel. Power, mode, increase, decrease, and others. He had already checked before. This was the villa's central air conditioning control system. Unfortunately, he had tried it before, and the AC was broken. But that wasn't the important thing right now. That wasn't what he just remembered. He quickly went upstairs to the bedroom. Sure enough, in the upper corner of the wall, there was something wrapped in fabric. It wasn't very big. Long and slightly curved. A pipe as thick as a baby's fist stuck out from the fabric cover and extended through an opening in the wall, leading outside. Lu Xun moved the nightstand over, stepped onto it, grabbed the edge of the fabric, and yanked it off. A cloud of dust burst into the air, making him instinctively cover his nose and mouth. He squeezed his eyes shut for a moment, then opened them again. Beneath the fabric, the true form of the object was revealed. A white, half-cylinder unit with a slightly open vent, exposing a glimpse of the air outlet beneath. If this wasn't an indoor AC unit, what else could it be? Just as he thought. But he really hadn't expected it. This villa already had central AC, yet there was still a separate small unit in the bedroom. Since the temperature had been moderate before, he hadn't needed air conditioning and had only done a quick scan of the bedroom. But even though he hadn't looked closely, he had still taken note of it. That's why he was able to remember it now. Still, in such freezing weather, would the AC even work? Luzin exhaled lightly and lowered his head. "Dog, go connect the power." Mechanical Dog had followed him upstairs. Upon hearing the command, it immediately turned around and wobbled out of the bedroom, heading downstairs. Luzin went to flip the bedroom's light switch. He listened as the faint clicking sounds gradually faded away, then disappeared. Moments later, the light turned on. He had also found 2 remote controls earlier in the nightstand drawer. Back then, he thought they were for the TV, so he hadn't paid much attention. Thinking about it now, one of them was definitely for the AC. But it didn't really matter. Those remotes were useless now. The batteries had long since died. He had tested them before. Luckily, the AC had physical buttons on the unit itself. Power, fan speed, airflow direction, mode, and timer, all lined up in a row. In the past, he would have thought this was an unnecessary design. Why would a wall-mounted AC need physical buttons? A remote was enough. But now, he felt like the designers of the old world had incredible foresight. The AC's power cord was still plugged into the wall. Luzin confirmed this and then reached out to press the power button. He tried long presses, short presses, pressing twice, pressing 3 times. But nothing worked. Was it a power issue, or was the AC broken? Not willing to give up, Luzin jumped down from the nightstand, ran to the bedroom door, and leaned over the upstairs railing, shouting, "Dog, come up." Unexpectedly, the first one to come up was Yao. She had already finished filling the bottles and had carried both hers and Luzin's inside. Now she was checking what Luzin was up to. Mechanical Dog followed behind her, swaying as it walked into the room. Luzin picked it up, stepped onto the nightstand again, and asked, "Can this AC plug be connected?" Dog's back immediately opened up, revealing a socket. Luzin thought to himself. This thing really was just a power bank, just like Yao's device. He plugged the AC's power cord into Dog's back. Beep. He heard the AC make a sound, and his eyes instantly lit up. He quickly pressed the buttons, switching it to heating mode and setting the fan speed to maximum. The long-abandoned machine slowly came to life. First, it blew out cold air, but soon, the cold turned to warmth, dispelling the chill in the room. Luzin immediately felt a comforting warmth spread over his body. Even though his nose was filled with the musty smell of an old AC, his skin rejoiced at the heat. It actually worked. Luzin was a little amazed. He had just wanted to give it a shot. Back in the old world, air conditioners were useless in such freezing weather. But in this world, ACs were clearly much more powerful. A good thing, indeed. "How is it?" He turned his head and asked Yao with a smile. Yao stared blankly at the air conditioner, not responding for a moment. She could feel the warmth too. "What do you think? How about we take this AC down and install it in your car?" Luzin suddenly had a wild idea and asked again. The weather was too cold. Not only was the car's engine heat ineffective, but even if it worked a little, Yao wouldn't want to keep the engine running while resting, wasting gasoline. Yao seriously thought about it for a while, then shook her head and said, "The car can't handle it." Of course, the car's voltage wasn't enough to support an indoor air conditioner. Luzin smiled slightly and patted Mechanical Dog's head. That's what Dog is for. Chapter 11, A few things in the bedroom. Yao gave Luzin a deep look but said nothing. She thought of something. If she agreed to Luzin's idea, then from now on, she would be tied to him. Mechanical Dog belonged to Luzin. If they ever went their separate ways, then the AC installed in the car would become useless. To keep the AC working, she would have to ensure that Luzin and Mechanical Dog remained in the car. Or one day, she could modify the car's electrical system so that it could power the AC on its own. But for her, that was pure fantasy. Yet, rejecting Luzin outright felt a little cruel. The temptation of an air conditioner was too great. In this world, where freezing temperatures struck unpredictably, a working heating system could be a matter of life and death. She had survived so far, always managing to make it through by luck. But who could say if tomorrow, she wouldn't freeze to death? The rising temperature in the room, brought by the AC, gave her an immense sense of security in this extreme cold. Who knows how much refrigerant is left in this AC, or how long it can last? But no matter how much is left, we can install it in the car first and remove it when it's used up. Luzin added another thought. Yao didn't quite understand. Refrigerant? Freon, Luzin explained. The cooling agent inside air conditioners. It needs this to function. Hearing this, Yao let out a breath of relief, but at the same time, She felt an inexplicable sense of disappointment. She immediately became alert, pushing that feeling out of her mind before saying, "All right." A long-term cooperative relationship now had a set limit due to practical constraints. That was a good thing for her. It suited her survival habits, as she had always been a loner. So that disappointment. She absolutely didn't need it. Yahweh was well aware that this feeling came from some unknown dependency that had started to take root in her heart. No matter how small or insignificant, any form of dependency was something she shouldn't have. She took a deep breath, forcing herself to calm down. She was a little curious about why Luzin knew so much about air conditioners. This relic of the old world. And even about things like Freon. But she didn't ask. She was certain that knowing too much about this man wouldn't do her any good. Besides, that knowledge wasn't useful for survival, so she simply buried her curiosity and left it unspoken. The two of them stayed inside the second-floor bedroom of the villa at 272 Jiang Road, waiting for the extreme cold to pass. In such terrifying weather, neither people nor animals would be out wandering. Everything that breathed would be hiding in shelters, avoiding the deadly chill. They were no exception. Driving in such weather was dangerous. So, for now, they were relatively safe here, waiting for the weather to change again. Neither of them spoke. They simply sat in the bedroom, quietly enjoying the warmth from the AC. Luzin sprawled onto the bed, closing his eyes as he indulged in the comfort of the villa's soft mattress. He had planned to enjoy this bed earlier, but before he could fall asleep, Yahweh had shown up, forcing him into a standoff that lasted the whole night. Now that he was back in this place, it was only natural that he made up for that lost comfort. Sure enough, nothing beats sleeping on a bed. He completely relaxed, letting himself sink into the embrace of the mattress, and said to Yahweh, "Do you want to lie down too?" Yahweh shot Luzin a cold glare, then sat on the floor beside the bed, leaning against it with her head lowered and eyes closed. She had chosen to sit as far away from Luzin as possible, picking a spot at the foot of the bed. Clearly, she wanted to put as much distance between them as she could. Luzin opened his eyes and glanced at her, inwardly commenting, "This woman really doesn't know how to enjoy life." Then, he closed his eyes again and went back to resting. The extreme cold lasted for 2 days. On the second day, when Luzin checked the trunk, he found that the wild boar meat inside had frozen solid. Some meats, when frozen to this extent, would have all their parasites and bacteria eliminated, making them safe to eat raw. But some wouldn't. Back in the old world, the Inuit used this method to preserve seal meat, freezing it into dried meat and slicing off thin pieces to eat directly. In ancient times, fish sashimi was handled in a similar way. Even modern sashimi had to go through specialized freezing procedures to ensure safety. Unfortunately, Luzin wasn't accustomed to eating frozen raw meat, and Yahweh clearly didn't know much about these things either. So the meat stayed in the car, stored as backup rations, and wasn't eaten for now. If they ever had to eat it raw, it wouldn't be a problem. They had dog, which could confirm whether the meat was safe or not. They had already taken their backpacks out of the car. Both had plenty of stored food. Luzin had instant noodles and mini bread, while Yahweh surprisingly had canned food and chocolate. Something that made Luzin incredibly envious. But this woman knew how to repay kindness. Since she had received a lot of help from Luzin before, she shared half a can of food with him and even gave him a piece of chocolate to keep for emergencies. Yahweh also pulled out a toolbox, which contained various screwdrivers, wrenches, pliers, hammers, utility knives, measuring tape, and more. Luzin was envious of that as well. He had no idea where she had managed to scavenge such a treasure trove in this day and age. While Mechanical Dog was busy powering the AC, Luzin, having nothing better to do, picked Dog up and started examining it. On a whim, he took out some toy motorcycle wheels he had collected earlier and wondered if he could install them on Dog's legs as a replacement for its metal hooves. Of course, it was just a passing thought. He wasn't an expert, and he wouldn't dare tamper with Dog's parts. What if he removed something and couldn't put it back? Besides, installing toy wheels onto such a precision-built machine was just ridiculous. But what he never expected was that, as he held the toy wheel next to Dog's leg, something magical happened. The joint between Dog's legs and metal hooves seemed to have some kind of rotating mechanism. At that moment, as if sensing something, the mechanism twisted and turned on its own, shrinking down. And with a click, the metal hoof detached and fell to the floor. What the hell? Luzin was dumbfounded. Then, as if realizing something, he moved the toy wheel closer. The rotating joint adjusted itself, automatically fitting to the wheel. Click. Dog's leg locked onto the wheel, replacing its metal hoof with a toy motorcycle wheel. The highly sophisticated Mechanical Dog, now equipped with cheap, low-quality toy wheels, looked utterly ridiculous. But why did this happen? Luzin couldn't figure it out. What's going on? Yahweh was also puzzled. No idea. Luzin could only shake his head. This strange transformation made Luzin feel like Dog was designed to adapt to different parts, as if it was made specifically to survive in the apocalypse by scavenging and repurposing junk. Without hesitation, he brought over the other 3 toy wheels and held them next to Dog's remaining metal hooves. Just like before, Dog automatically adjusted itself, swapping out all 4 hooves for the toy wheels. Luzin could only marvel at this strange little dog. As for how well the toy wheels would work, he'd have to wait until Dog finished supplying power to the AC before testing it. For various reasons, he didn't throw away the removed metal hooves. Instead, he carefully stored them away. If the wheels didn't work out, the hooves could still be put back on. Even if the wheels were fine, parts taken from toys would never be as durable as the original hooves. Once they wore out and no suitable replacement wheels were found, the hooves would have to be reattached. 2 days later, the weather suddenly warmed up. Yahweh tied her leather jacket around her slim but strong waist again, while Luzin took off his thick outerwear and stuffed it into his backpack. He turned off the AC and unplugged the power. Dog was finally free again and immediately rolled out of the bedroom, only to crash straight into the railing. Fortunately, it seemed to have some kind of self-analysis function for its components. It quickly adapted to its new body parts, smoothly controlling the 4 wheels on its legs. Sure enough, it moved silently and steadily, no longer wobbling. Then, thud 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 thud. Dog, failing to analyze the rules for navigating special terrain, rolled straight down the staircase. Chapter 12, Installing the air conditioner. Seeing Dog get into an accident, Yahweh was even more anxious than Luzin. She quickly followed down the staircase and picked up Dog, who was lying on its back, to check on it. Dog's 4 legs twitched a little but showed no issues, which finally put her at ease. Luzin leaned over the railing upstairs and glanced down. Is it okay? No. Yahweh shook her head and set the mechanical dog down. Luzin said, I should swap out the wheels later. Looks like hooves work better. Yahweh nodded in agreement. Dog was so useful. If it broke from a fall, what would they do? But the mechanical dog suddenly stood still as if adjusting something. After a while, it seemed to finish calibrating. It rolled its wheels back and forth like a toy car moving forward and backward, then started walking again with a da-da-da-da sound. Amazingly, the wheels had locked in place and could function as hooves. Wait, was Dog actually adapting its programming just now? Looks like we don't need to change them. Damn, we've traveled from the north to the south, and I never expected Dog to have this kind of ability. Luzin sighed. What he hadn't expected was Yahweh suddenly saying in a soft voice, this isn't the south yet. Luzin was slightly surprised. This woman seemed quite sensitive about this topic. He asked, then where is the south? Yahweh remained silent and didn't answer. Luzin didn't press further. He returned inside, carefully carrying an air conditioner he had just uninstalled using Yahweh's tools. Meanwhile, after confirming Dog was indeed fine and had reconfigured its movement control program, bouncing around energetically again, Yahweh picked it up and went upstairs. As soon as she entered the bedroom, she saw Luzin holding the air conditioner, waiting for her. Come help. The inside of this pipe is vacuum sealed, and we don't have the tools to reseal it. We'll have to remove both the outdoor and indoor units along with the pipes. Luzin said. Yahweh reached out and took the air conditioner. It was practically weightless to her. Luzin reminded her, the pipe isn't long enough. You'll have to hold on to the air conditioner here for a bit. Since we don't have the proper tools to dismantle it, I'll have to remove the entire unit as one piece. Okay. Yahweh agreed and held the air conditioner in place. Luzin opened the bedroom window and leaned out to check. After examining it, he grabbed a hammer from Yahweh's toolbox and forcefully smashed an opening in the wall, breaking some of the steel reinforcements inside. The opening extended all the way to the window, allowing him to move the pipe horizontally and remove the entire outdoor unit. Yahweh remained where she was, unsure what an outdoor unit was, but since Luzin clearly knew, she just followed along. It wasn't just air conditioners. Luzin seemed to know a lot about other things, too. For example, he often talked about parasites, bacteria, and proteins in meat. She understood parasites and bacteria, but she had no idea what proteins were. Before, she had simply followed Luzin's advice based on her own life experience, knowing his words were beneficial to her. Now, it was the same. She saw Luzin climb out the window and glanced outside, finally understanding what the outdoor unit was. Mounted on the exterior wall was a metal box, the same color as the air conditioner, covered in dust and rust spots. Since the angle wasn't ideal, Luzin had to step fully outside to remove the unit. With his current strength, lifting the outdoor unit was effortless. In his past life, this would have been unthinkable. I'm coming in. Step back. Luzin said, carrying the air conditioner's outdoor unit inside while adjusting the connected pipe to avoid it getting snagged on anything. One person climbed back inside, and the other stepped back. Soon, they had moved the entire air conditioner unit to the bed. Let's go. Load the air conditioner onto the car. I'll try installing it. Luzin said. The water in the swimming pool is probably frozen, but since it's warm now, it should thaw soon. How about we wait a bit, collect some water, then leave? The weather in this world was that extreme. If his body hadn't undergone drastic changes after arriving here, he would have died long ago in these alternating waves of freezing and scorching temperatures. Yao Wei nodded, then picked up the outdoor unit by herself and walked out of the bedroom. Luzin originally intended to argue for carrying the heavier outdoor unit himself, but seeing how effortlessly Yao Wei lifted it, as if she were just carrying dog, he gave up and followed with the indoor unit. Behind them, the mechanical dog followed along, rolling smoothly and quickly on its 4 wheels. When it reached the staircase, it braked instantly. Its tires locked in place, so going downstairs wasn't a problem. However, as it ran down, it wobbled just like before, making it look a little comical. When they reached the car, they set the air conditioner units down, and Luzin began assessing the best place to install them. He finally chose the side of the trunk. There was an iron mesh there, which could secure the indoor unit. It was also close to the window, making it easy to cut an opening for the pipe. As for the outdoor unit, Luzin originally thought of placing it on the roof but suddenly remembered hearing somewhere that the outdoor unit should be lower than the indoor unit. So he looked for another spot. After circling the car, he found that the rear exterior had a mount for a spare tire. Since the car didn't have one, it was the perfect place to hang the outdoor unit. It might cause minor issues, but between 2 drawbacks, he had to choose the lesser one. Hanging it at the rear was the best option. However, before installing the air conditioner, there was one more thing. He needed the car owner's permission. I need to cut a hole in your car for the pipe to go through. Is that okay? If not, we can forget about it. Luzin asked. Yao Wei furrowed her brows, thought for a moment, then asked, will the air conditioner work once installed? Luzin said, we've been using it all along. We're just moving it from the building to your car. The air conditioner itself is fine. Yao Wei finally nodded. Okay. I'll cut the hole. She didn't fully trust Luzin's handiwork. So Luzin stepped aside and pointed out where the hole needed to be, letting Yao Wei do it herself. Once she finished, Luzin immediately understood why she had insisted on doing it. The hole was perfectly positioned. Right next to the window, allowing the pipe to be slotted in easily. Once the window was closed, it would press against the pipe snugly, sealing it flawlessly without any gaps. If it were him, he definitely wouldn't have been able to do it so precisely. Impressive. Luzin praised. He removed the iron mesh from the rear window, rolled it down, inserted the indoor unit through the window, secured the pipe, rolled the window back up, reinstalled the iron mesh, and then started tying everything down. Yao Wei's car had plenty of ropes. With some effort, they secured the indoor unit tightly to the iron mesh. As for the outdoor unit, they used the same method to hang it on the spare tire mount at the back of the car. Once everything was in place, Luzin called Dog into the car and connected the power supply. Bzzz. The air conditioner started up, and the temperature inside the car quickly rose. Luzin adjusted the settings again, switching to cooling mode. A burst of cool air filled the car, making it incredibly refreshing. Alright, job's done. Luzin smiled in satisfaction, then turned to Yao Wei. How is it? Yao Wei's response was brief, but at least she nodded. Next, the two of them went to the swimming pool outside and filled up bottles with water. Yao Wei even took a pot from the car and filled it with water as well. Seeing the pot, Luzin couldn't help but sigh nostalgically. Back then, I used to have pots too. And not just one. Cooking pots, steaming pots, clay pots, woks, everything. But unfortunately, when he left Dongmen County's Wanshai village, they weren't convenient to carry, so he had to leave them all behind. Even more unfortunate was that back when he was in Wanshai village, he had to ration oil and salt so carefully that he never even got to use his wok. Life was just too hard. He sighed, but Yao Wei didn't respond. Seeing her carrying a pot of water back to the car, he followed and said, are we planning to cook the rest of the pork? If I'd known, I would have kept the pig bones. We could have made soup. That pot must have been blocked by something earlier. He hadn't even noticed it. Oh. Yao Wei had never made soup with pig bones before, but she had unknowingly started trusting Luzin's knowledge. So she said, then let's go back and loot them. Luzin. Chapter 13, South and North. Luzin finally persuaded Yao Wei not to go back into the forest to retrieve the pig bones they had left behind. He told Yao Wei that making pork bone soup required a long time of high-temperature boiling. Since they would be on the road, and the firewood they had painstakingly collected was too precious to waste. It was better not to make the soup. Firewood that could be burned was also an essential survival resource. That's why Yao Wei had collected some and stored it in the corner of the trunk. Back in the forest, if not for the sudden cold snap, she would have chopped more firewood to stock up the car's supplies. Unfortunately, Yao Wei's bucket had an open top. If it were a tool from the old world, it wouldn't be a problem. But in this world, with the roads being so bumpy, if she filled it with oil and left it in the car, it would probably spill everywhere. It wasn't suitable for storage or transport. They drove straight to the gas station from before. The sign on the roof now only had 3 remaining characters, Jia Yuzan, with the rest missing. Even though this was their 3rd time visiting, Luzin and Yao Wei still didn't know the name of the gas station. Yao Wei parked the car beside the working fuel pump. As before, the 2 of them and the dog first inspected the area to ensure there was no danger. Once they confirmed everything was fine, Luzin directed Dog to connect to the fuel pump's circuit and start refueling. Dog had originally been plugged into the air conditioner, but upon hearing Luzin's command, it didn't even need him to unplug it. Some internal mechanism activated, and it directly ejected the air conditioner plug on its own. Dog didn't even wait for Luzin to open the rear car door. It simply spun its wheels, bounced off its legs, and landed on the front passenger seat before hopping out of the front door. Then, rolling on its 4-wheeled legs, it entered the station building to check, moving in complete silence. It's getting more useful. Luzin smiled, very satisfied. Meanwhile, Yao Wei looked at Dog, which was now hanging onto the electrical panel, unable to hide the envy in her eyes. She still had a habit of avoiding waste, so as soon as the car was fully refueled, she had Luzin instruct the mechanical dog to disconnect the power. "Alright, cut the power and get in the car." Luzin gave the order. Dog disconnected from the circuit, landed on the ground, spun its wheels, and rolled smoothly to Yao Wei's car. Watching this, Luzin felt a twinge of jealousy. These wheels seemed incredibly efficient. If only he had this ability too. Dog and Luzin both got into the car. Yao Wei returned the fuel nozzle, closed the fuel tank cap, and started the engine, continuing westward. Luzin originally planned to have Dog reconnect the air conditioner, but Yao Wei stopped him. Yao Wei said, "Save the coolant for when it gets cold." Luzin replied, "Don't worry, heating doesn't use coolant. In hot weather, they could just open the windows and endure. But in extreme cold, without the air conditioner, it would be life-threatening." They passed their previous rest stop and drove for a long time before suddenly encountering a wide river. The river was over 100 meters across, with a slow current that drifted lazily downstream. Luckily, there was a bridge 2 lanes wide, allowing vehicles to cross. The asphalt road on the bridge was already cracked, looking long neglected. It raised concerns about whether the bridge could support the weight of a car and 2 people. But Yao Wei clearly wasn't worried about that. She twisted around, climbed into the back, retrieved a pair of binoculars from her backpack, and carefully scanned the bridge, the river, and the far bank for any dangers. Binoculars? That's a great item. Seeing the device in Yao Wei's hands, Luzin couldn't help but feel a bit envious. He also tried to be useful in his own way. Lifting the mechanical dog from under his feet and placing it on the dashboard. "Dog, check ahead for danger." Dog immediately swept its glowing eyes across the area, scanning left, right, up, and down before flashing its eye lights at Luzin. Luzin understood and told Yao Wei, "No danger ahead." Yao Wei put away her binoculars and gave Luzin a sidelong glance. The car drove onto the bridge, and sure enough, there was no danger. As they continued forward, Luzin glanced to the right. Through the gaps in the bridge railing, he could see the water flowing below. He asked Yao Wei, "We've been heading west all this time. Where exactly are we going?" "To the south." Yao Wei said, "It's too cold in the north. You can't survive here. Going directly south is dangerous. Heading west is safer." Luzin recalled Yao Wei's earlier words. "This isn't the south yet. Is the south more suitable for survival?" he asked. Yao Wei replied, "Better than the north." Luzin asked, "Then why did you come here?" Yao Wei shook her head and said, "Someone else told me to." She paused, then added, "Only those who can't win the fight will flee north to struggle for survival." This sentence was much longer than her usual replies, but compared to the amount of information it contained, it was still too brief. Even so, Luzin understood. Compared to this place, the south likely had more stable and less extreme weather, making it more livable. However, it also meant intense conflicts. Those who lost in those struggles, those who couldn't survive in the south, had no choice but to flee north, or rather, be driven north, to this barren and unforgiving land, where life or death depended on fate. "I'll find a relatively safe place to drop you off, don't worry." When they finally reached the end of the bridge, Yao Wei said this to Luzin. Luzon's mouth twitched. Thanks. After thinking for a moment, he asked, what about you? Where are you planning to go? Yao Wei said, I have a map in my backpack. Luzon understood what she meant. Mimicking Yao Wei's earlier movements, he climbed into the back and rummaged through her bag, pulling out a small pocket-sized book. His movements weren't as smooth and flexible as Yao Wei's, but he was still quick and efficient. With the book in hand, he returned to the front passenger seat. The cover of the pocket book seemed to feature a world map, with 5 large characters, World Atlas I. Looking at the map, he noticed that the land masses in this world were more compact compared to his past life. Unlike Earth's 7 continents, this world had only 4. 1 at the North Pole, 1 at the South Pole, and 2 in between. Once seated properly in the passenger seat, Luzon took another look at the cover. Below the title World Atlas I, there were a few smaller words, Newly Revised Practical Edition. Opening it, he immediately understood what newly revised practical meant. The atlas was divided into sections based on regions and cities, with roads and landmarks clearly marked, including gas stations. He examined it closely and noticed that in this world's administrative divisions, the province level was missing. A single city covered an area as large as an entire province in his past life. There were still differences. This definitely wasn't his past life. Luzon sighed. Using the index, he found Jianghu District, Yubai City, then checked the marked gas stations. 3 in the east had already been crossed out. Mark a check on this one. Yao Wei suddenly pointed to a gas station icon at the far west of the map and said. Chapter 14, On Nepi's hearing what Yao Wei said, Luzon immediately understood. The 3 X-marked spots on the map were places Yao Wei had already visited. Either they were out of fuel, or it was impossible to refuel there. Where's a pen? He asked, while thinking to himself. This woman is exactly as he expected. She has a notebook and a pen, but all she does is write in her diary, wasting paper and ink. Meanwhile, someone else knows how to put them to good use. Impressive. If he'd learned this trick earlier, he'd never have wasted time writing a diary. Even without an atlas, he could have just drawn his own route map on blank paper. Check the bottom of the bag. Yao Wei spoke 4 words. So Luzon had no choice but to reach into the back seat, rummage through Yao Wei's backpack for a while, and finally pull out a pen from the bottom. Then, he returned to the front seat. He uncapped the pen and marked a check on the gas station icon. That's when he noticed the map. This was a map of Jianghu District in Yubai City. At the edge of the map, a long, wide river was drawn. On the blue icon representing the river, 4 characters were written, Jianghu Reservoir. Comparing its location, it seemed to be the same river they had just crossed under the bridge. The bridge they passed was at the narrowest part of the river. Technically, they hadn't entered the reservoir. Luzon thought to himself, the plumbing system of the villa at 272 Jianghu Road was likely connected to this reservoir. If that's the case, then maybe the reservoir's main pipeline was still functional. Would that mean there were other places still habitable? As he absent-mindedly pondered, Yao Wei suddenly said, page 27. Page 27 was in the latter half of the booklet. Luzon noticed this section was noticeably darker from frequent flipping. It was clear that Yao Wei had looked at this part a lot. He flipped to page 27 of World Map. It was a map of an entire province. Long and narrow, with mostly flat terrain. In the upper right corner, 3 characters were printed, Meng's City. In the lower left corner of the Meng's City map was Wangquan County. A small, irregularly shaped map of the county was drawn, with a thickly marked dot in the upper right corner. Luzon took one look and understood. This was Yao Wei's target. This place? He flipped a few more pages and found Wangquan County. This page was filled with markings, and at the center of the county, a large circle had been drawn. Before I find the oasis, I'm going there, Yao Wei said, gripping the wheel, her voice low. Luzon turned his head to glance at her. A sudden fierceness flashed in her eyes. She gripped the steering wheel tightly, staring straight ahead as if she were about to floor the gas pedal and run someone over. He didn't need to ask to guess. There was probably someone she wanted revenge on there. Recalling what she'd mentioned before. Her mother was dead, and that cryptic remark, only those who can't fight anymore hide in the north, barely surviving. There was a good chance that her mother had died in that place. So, she had never gone south. The whole "the south is better than the north" thing might have been a lie. But Luzon didn't press further. Seeing Yao Wei's current expression, he knew that asking more questions would just invite trouble. Then, refuel. That was all he said. Yao Wei remained silent, continuing to drive. The car passed the bridge and went over a small hill. They followed the mountain for a while, the road running parallel to the river. Luzon flipped back to Yubai City in the atlas. Turning the page, he found Fengzheng County. A river flowed from the reservoir at the edge of the map, heading straight west. 2 characters were marked beside it, Gooey River. What is the oasis? Luzin asked. Asking about Wanquan County might touch a nerve, but this question seemed safer. He was curious, too. The name just sounded like somewhere livable. But Yao simply said, I don't know. You don't know? Then how do you even know about the oasis? My mom told me. Luzin fell silent for a moment before saying, sorry. Yao shook her head, not minding. If we find it one day, and you're still alive, I'll tell you, she said. Not bad. This person wasn't so bad after all. Thanks, Luzin said. As soon as the words left his mouth, a memory of a movie from his past life surfaced. It was some famous post-apocalyptic film, Mad Max or something. In that movie, people were searching for an oasis too, but in the end, it turned out to be a lie. But he didn't mention it to Yao. After all, this world was different. A movie was just a movie, and real life was real life. How could he use a movie plot as a reference for reality? If he told Yao about it and ended up jinxing everything, what if she got pissed and decided to hack him to death? She was way too fierce. Luzin wasn't sure if he could even beat her in a fight. But when Yao heard his thanks, she simply shook her head again. A lot of people are looking for the oasis. They're all heading south. But none of them have found it. Luzin fell silent again and muttered, on a piece, huh? How did this conversation go from Mad Max to One Piece? But in this world, on a piece didn't represent dreams. It represented the hope of survival. Suddenly, Yao slammed the brakes. Luzin nearly smacked into the windshield. Thud. At his feet, Dog was thrown forward, hitting the front. Luckily, the car wasn't moving too fast, so neither Dog nor the car was seriously damaged. You know? Yao asked in shock. This woman. She thought Onepiece was another name for the oasis. Luzin quickly explained, no, it's from a story. In that story, a lot of people were searching for a place, and it sounded similar to the oasis. Oh. Yao responded dully, sounding disappointed. She wasn't interested in stories. But she did notice something else. You spoke in a foreign language just now? Luzin nodded. Yeah. Did this world have English? It should. Right? After all, Chinese existed. Yao added, if we ever find another world atlas, help me check. The oasis might not be in World Map I. Apparently, the world map was divided into multiple volumes. From how she spoke, it seemed like she had already searched through every place in World Map I at critical moments. She really did talk quite a bit. Luzin said, we'll see when the time comes. There are many kinds of foreign languages. Not necessarily ones I can read. Okay. Yao nodded and kept driving. Luzin lowered his head to look at the Fengjiang County map. He was honestly a little surprised that this world still had such maps. Without electronic navigation, a small atlas like this could clearly document and mark every location. For example, on the Fengjiang County map, places like Central Square, County Government, and Fengjiang Police Station were all clearly visible. Outside the county's urban area, the scattered villages looked incredibly desolate. There's a gas station not far ahead, after a left turn. Luzin glanced at the map and reminded Yao. So when they reached the intersection ahead, Yao turned the wheel and made a left. Chapter 15, depends on luck. Luzin had just said it casually, but he didn't expect Yao to actually turn the wheel. But thinking about it, it made sense. In a world where everything seemed to be falling into ruin, how could you drive without worrying about running out of fuel? If you didn't stop at gas stations along the way to refill, you'd end up like Yao before. Forced to abandon the car somewhere, carrying a fuel can to refuel. That would eventually become routine. And if you were unlucky, even if you searched for gas stations, carrying a fuel can would still become a regular occurrence. Luzin had always thought that range anxiety was something only electric car drivers had to deal with. He never expected to experience it firsthand while sitting in a gas-guzzling vehicle. The refueling process was the same as before. First, scout the area to confirm it was safe. Then, find the electrical panel, attempt to restore power, and finally, use the fuel nozzle to pump gas. They were in luck. The gas station was still deserted, but just like before, the station building had already been thoroughly looted. This time, even the toy motorcycle was gone. These places had likely been stripped clean of supplies, making them useless to most people. So no one bothered coming back. Luzin wasn't sure if there were still supplies left in Fengjiang County, or if everything had already been scavenged. As he picked up Dog to have it connect the circuit, he wondered whether they should scavenge in the countryside or head into the city. Based on his experience traveling from north to south over the past year, combined with Yao's words and the world atlas eye, he had developed a rough understanding of this world. The further north you went, the more desolate it became, and the less suitable it was for human survival. Maybe, like Earth, this world had a planetary axis, and conditions were different in the other hemisphere. But for now, this was the pattern. That explained why, when he was further north, he could scavenge freely, whether in cities or rural areas, without encountering many people. But as soon as he entered Mazu City, he ran into the wolf gang and the dog gang. He wasn't sure if the survivors here would establish their bases in the countryside or the city. Or maybe neither. Damn it. There was a local right next to him. Why was he overthinking all this? Where are we scavenging next? Luzin asked. Dog connected the circuit, and the fuel pump hummed to life. As the two walked toward the fuel pump, Yahweh replied, "Depends on our luck." Luzin asked again, "Are we more likely to run into people in the city or in the villages?" Yahweh still gave the same answer, "Depends on our luck." Luzin. Alright. This gas station had 4 fuel pumps. Once Dog restored power, all 4 screens lit up. Seemed like they were lucky. Yahweh tested 3 fuel nozzles, but none of them dispensed gas. By the time they reached the last one, both of them felt a little nervous. But when she inserted the nozzle and operated the pump, the fuel pump roared to life, continuously filling the fuel tank until the nozzle clicked off. Out of 4 pumps, 1 still worked. They really were lucky. With that, they hit the road again. Luzin practically became a navigator, following the map to guide Yahweh. After about 20 minutes, a village appeared in sight. Luzin glanced at the map. This village was labeled Jajia Village. Yahweh drove in, slowly passing through the village without rushing to get out of the car. Luzin had seen how cautious this woman was before, so he immediately understood. She wanted to circle the village first, confirm there were no people, and then get out to search for supplies. This was the safest approach. And it proved to be the right call. As they drove into the village, gunfire suddenly rang out. Whoever fired had terrible aim. Nothing was hit. The shot came from Luzin's side. He turned his head toward the sound and saw someone in a 2-story courtyard house, setting up a gun on the second-floor windowsill, taking potshots at them. More heads popped up over the courtyard wall, their intentions unclear. Quite a few people, Luzin said as he grabbed his submachine gun. He had kept it within reach at all times. Now that he no longer needed to be on guard against Yahweh, he still had to stay prepared for any sudden dangers. Like now. Without hesitation, Yahweh floored the gas pedal, sending the car speeding forward at full throttle. Luzin didn't even get the chance to fire. By the time he looked back through the dust-covered rear window, shadowy figures could be seen standing at the roadside, watching helplessly as the car sped away. Yahweh didn't stop until they had completely left Jajia village, showing no intention of turning back. She had simply abandoned it. Luzin fully understood. Compared to staying alive, pride and revenge were meaningless. His shooting wasn't even that accurate. There was no point in risking their lives over a few stray shots. If their car tires got shot out, that would be a real disaster. The next stop is straight ahead. Wanhyakan. Another Wanhyakan. Luzin reported the road conditions to Yahweh. Wanhyakan was probably a common village name. It must have originated from ancient times when the population in those areas reached 10,000 households, thus earning the name. Thinking back to the Wanhyakan in Dongman County, now long abandoned, he couldn't help but sigh at the fragility of human existence. They continued onward for another 20 minutes and arrived at Fengjiang County's Wanhyakan. As usual, Yahweh drove through the village first to make sure no one was around before choosing a spot to stop and explore. They weren't planning to search the whole village. Yahweh had already scanned the area while driving. Most of the houses were in ruins, looking even more desolate than Jajia village. No wonder those people had chosen Jajia village as their base instead of this place. Only one house still remained intact. Both Luzin and Yahweh figured it had already been searched, but they decided to check it out anyway. Yahweh found a corridor nearby to park the car. Somewhere out of plain sight, with open access in both directions. That way, if things went south, they wouldn't get trapped. After parking, the two geared up and entered the house together. Sure enough, the place had already been looted. The courtyard walls had collapsed, the front door was open, and stepping through the overgrown yard, they found the first floor door had been smashed in, breaking the floor tiles beneath it. Inside, there was a TV and a refrigerator. The fridge door was left open. Completely empty. There were even bullet holes on the fridge door, evidence that a fight had taken place here. Seeing this, Luzin and Yahweh sped up their search. A place that had been this active before meant it had seen plenty of visitors. And if a lot of people had been here before, chances were there wouldn't be much left. Or maybe, nothing at all. But just as they were rummaging through drawers and cabinets, Dog rolled over to a corner of the wall, stopped on a floor tile, and suddenly, its eyes lit up. Chapter 16, Safe. Luzin and Yahweh both looked at the mechanical dog. After spending the past few days together, Yahweh had already figured out what it meant when the mechanical dog's eyes lit up. Tap, tap. The dog lifted its left front leg and tapped the toy motorcycle wheel attached to it against a floor tile. The sound was solid and muffled, not hollow. But after traveling together for so long, Lu Xian had absolute trust in the dog's abilities. Without hesitation, he crouched down to examine the tile carefully. Yao Wei was skeptical but still followed suit, crouching down with Lu Xian. The two of them inspected it thoroughly, touching and tapping, but found nothing unusual about the tile. It was perfectly ordinary, fitting seamlessly with the surrounding tiles. Even the grout from years ago was still visible, showing no signs of anything being hidden underneath. "Let's go." Yao Wei gave up and stood up. But just as she got up, she saw Lu Xian suddenly raise his submachine gun and slam the butt of the gun down hard on the floor tile. Bang! With sheer force, the tile cracked.